In a low stance defensively, matched up with Mitchell, fires up a three. Kills!
When the Indiana Fever played the Connecticut Sun, it was more than just a basketball game. It was a matter of survival. The Fever's prospects of making the playoffs were in shambles going into the evening after they had dropped consecutive games against clubs lower in the standings with a 21-point deficit, a lackluster offense, and the absence of key players like Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark. It appeared as though the season had ended on the court. However, basketball has the ability to transform hopelessness into optimism. The most unlikely comeback in team history was triggered by Kelsey Mitchell's outburst on this particular night.
So it was over. The season was done.
Belief is cruelly tested in sports. In what seemed like a game that had to be won, the Fever were beaten, battered, and behind 21 points against the Sun. Sophie Cunningham had just been defeated. Caitlin Clark was still out, and it seemed like the season was already finished to all of the viewers. However, Kelsey Mitchell and the Fever performed something remarkable. Just when it looked like there was no hope left, their season was rewritten in real time as a rally for the ages transformed hopelessness into faith. It was more than simply a basketball game. It was about having heart, being strong, and not giving up.
This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win.
The season for the Indiana Fever had been filled with heartbreaking setbacks, injuries, and the nagging worry. Nothing could have looked worse than facing the Connecticut Sun. They already lost Ari McDonald, Sydney Colson, and Caitlin Clark, and they suffered the devastating loss of Sophie Cunningham. Both fans and analysts wrote the obituary on the Fever's playoff prospects since they were down 21 points and lethargic on both ends. Then, seemingly without warning, Kelsey Mitchell ignited a spark. A single bucket became two, and finally a full-scale explosion. What came next was the greatest comeback in franchise history, not simply a rally.
It went straight to social media.
The Fever appeared done for the majority of the evening. Every defensive lapse, missed shot, and turnover shouted season over. The last nail in their coffin would have been a loss to the Sun, the poorest team in the league. Then the shift arrived after being icy cold for the first half. Kelsey Mitchell exploded. Lexi Hull was diagnosed with a stroke. The Odyssey Sims launched a furious attack. Indiana fought its way back into the battle piece by piece. By the end of the game, they were not only competing, they were winning. It was more than simply a victory in the end. It was history, survival, and a warning: don't discount the Fever.
We got Sophie's sister Lindsay and her mom Paula. At WNBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game, protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you, Sophie Cunningham. And Sophie's mother, Paula. Hartley is a disgruntled player having trouble everywhere she goes. She's playing mean and plays out of control.
With a 20-point deficit at the break, Indiana supporters could only shake their heads. Another wound won, another night of squandered time. Missing the playoffs is only one more step away. To be honest, nobody would have blamed the Fever for quitting. They had every reason to do so. Champions, however, are characterized by their reactions when things go wrong. In response, Kelsey Mitchell had one of the best second half in WNBA history, scoring 34 points with clutch basket after clutch basket. Aaliyah Boston, Odyssey Sims, and Lexi Hull helped the Fever overcome a 21-point deficit and surprise Connecticut. It was tenacity, passion, and belief, not luck.
One of your starters goes down, one of your leaders goes down. And after that, it did feel like the morale of the team was down for the first half, and they went into halftime being down 20 points. And I thought, I was on live, you guys heard it from me, I was like, okay, this game's done. Like, they just can't get out of it. The morale of the team is done. Seeing Sophie go down, like, maybe this team just doesn't have any fight left in them. And I was actually ready to give them a pass as well. I was like, you know what? It's been a hard season. And at some point, you might just have to throw in the towel and be like, you know what? We will get after it next season. It is what it is.
Staring into the abyss where the Fever injuries had mounted, the playoffs were evaporating, and Sophie Cunningham's fall seemed like the last straw. The dream appeared to be over when the Sun, one of the league's worst clubs, was ahead 21. Then came the storm. Odyssey Sims showed no fear. Lexi Hull found atonement. Kelsey Mitchell caught fire, and the bench produced crucial hustle plays. The Fever weren't just alive by overtime, they were on the rise. Saving a season wasn't the only goal of a spectacular comeback. The goal was to demonstrate that Indiana was still capable of fighting, believing, and making a difference.
Essentially, I thought, well, I wasted my day watching this game and going live for it. Then cue the end of the third quarter. the momentum shifted and the Fever started chipping away at this enormous lead that the Connecticut Sun had on them. For the majority of the game, I would say that the lead was around 15, 16 points, and they got it down to 8 points, and Kelsey Mitchell started heating up.
Despite the fact that basketball is a game of runs, this particular run was one of survival, lifeless, out of rhythm, and emotionally devastated following Sophie Cunningham's injury. The Indiana Fever fell behind Connecticut by 21. The fans had become hopeless. The season was ready to be buried by analysts. However, Kelsey Mitchell turned despair into history. She cut down the gap with stroke after shot. Hull Lexi struck a dagger. Odyssey Sims was not going to give up. The Fever achieved the biggest comeback in the history of the series. At the conclusion, this was more than simply a game. It was a lifeline, a turning point, and a testament to tenacity.
As a matter of fact, this was the largest comeback in Indiana Fever franchise history. And it was funny because there were so many people cheering in Connecticut for the Indiana Fever when all this was happening. There was actually just so many Fever fans in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, when Marina Mabry went on the court in the beginning of the game, they booed her. Imagine getting booed in your own arena.
Every season has a defining moment. It happened for the Indiana Fever versus the Connecticut Sun. Indiana had every reason to give up as they were down 21 points without their best players and appeared to be shattered by yet another injury. Rather, they retaliated despite having a terrible start. Kelsey Mitchell had an incredible game, scoring 34 points in the second half. Odyssey Sims surged through with gutsy drives while Lexi Hull buried her slump with clutch threes. The Fever had pulled off the biggest comeback in team history as the buzzer rang, and now there was a renewed sense of belief.
So proud of you guys. I know that sometimes it sounds like just a word when we talk about being resilient, but it's not, man. It's how we live. It's how y'all live, and it's a tribute to you. It's a tribute to your connectedness, your togetherness, your toughness, your mindset. Your never give up gritty attitudes. Like, that's what it takes. That's what it takes, and we will never be counted out, because that is worth gold. That is worth gold. Kels, God damn, baby. Put us on your back.
The Fever were meant to be buried in the Sun game. Indiana was down by 21 points, already missing Caitlin Clark, and still recovering from Sophie Cunningham's injury. Morale was low, the defense appeared hopeless, and the offense was slow. However, something changed. Lexi Hull came through in the clutch. Odyssey Sims blasted her way into the paint, and Kelsey Mitchell exploded. Indiana wasn't just back by overtime, they were unbeatable. A victory of 9,993 changed the course of the season. Fans received history instead of heartache. They had hope instead of despair. This was not just a return, it was Fever Nation's lifeblood.
To see Sophie Cunningham go down with injury amid all the other injuries that the Fever have suffered, it really felt like it was over. I mean, before the game, Stephanie White said she hopes Caitlin Clark is back at some point in the regular season. Then you see Sophie come down, and you see them getting blown out by the Sun, and you kind of think, what's the point?
The air fled the building when Sophie Cunningham fell. The Fever appeared to be out of fight, down big and shorthanded. Another crushing defeat was imminent. However, sports are humorous, because the greatest comebacks can occasionally be sparked by the saddest periods. After being chilly in the first half, Kelsey Mitchell exploded for 34 points in the second. Following weeks of shooting difficulties, Lexi Hull drilled daggers. Odyssey Sims was an adventurous driver. The defense was locked in. Indiana had suddenly rushed all the way back, wiped out a 21-point deficit. Overtime was in charge. In addition to winning, the Fever changed the course of their season and offered supporters hope.
Now that I'm watching it instead of reading what she had to say, I'm still on my theory that I don't believe Caitlin Clark come back. For her to say she's hopeful that she's going to come back, that's the game plan. She didn't seem or look very confident in stating that Caitlin was going to come back. This is a very interesting conversation she's having with reporters.
Indiana Fever appeared to be done. Their season appeared on the verge of collapse when they fell 21 to the Sun without Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and other players. Even the spectators sensed it. Another night squandered, another heartbreaking loss. But these kinds of moments are what basketball is all about. In the second half, Kelsey Mitchell scored 34 points. Exploding big shots were hit by Lexi Hull, Brianna Turner, and Odyssey Sims performed with passion. Indiana retaliated piece by piece and compelled overtime. Then with grace and fire, they laid Connecticut to rest. Not only was the biggest comeback in club history a victory, but it also demonstrated that this squad is...
You guys don't think that today, quote unquote, 1,000,000% for sure, saved the Fever season? I think it did. I think it did. I think it was huge for the season. I think the Indiana Fever, unless the Sparks come back in this game, are probably going to make the playoffs. And is there an argument to be made that it's actually better for the Fever to have lost this game and to not make the playoffs? Sure. But you know what, as a sports fan, fuck losing. Fuck tanking. I want to see the Indiana Fever play in the playoffs because I think Caitlin Clark's going to be healthy for the playoffs. I think Caitlin Clark is going to be healthy for the playoffs. I think that spell, those last 3 games, where I don't think anyone's going to play in that last Lynx game unless it's needed. I think that Mystics and Sky game back to back, I think she's going to become, even if she's a little bit iffy, no matter what, if they're going to make the playoffs, I think she's coming back for those 2 games. And then with Caitlin Clark there, even a 75% Caitlin Clark, people are saying, oh, Caitlin Clark, she's going to get surgery in the offseason. People are like, oh, she needs surgery in the offseason. If she needs surgery in the offseason, go and play. Go and play in the playoffs. Because with Kelsey Mitchell, the way she can score, you have a puncher's chance. You always have a puncher's chance.
There is a heartbeat to any comeback, and Kelsey Mitchell was the Fever's. She only managed 4 points in the first half, but she scored 34 in the second, leading Indiana to their biggest turnaround in team history. After falling behind 21 points, Odyssey Sims launched an unrelenting onslaught. Lexi Hull lifted her slump, and the bench provided crucial gritty minutes. There was more to the final score, 99-93, than just numbers. It demonstrated tenacity, evidence that the Fever will fight despite being injured, bruised and counted out, and now that they still have a chance to make the playoffs, this comeback might define their entire season.